Coming up on Interviews, legendary song and dance man, actor, and activist Ben Vereen. We'll talk about the heights of success, the depths of a debilitating accident, and the need to give something back. From Jesus Christ Superstar to Roots and Bob Fosse, I'm Ernie Manouse. Join me for our conversation with Ben Vereen. You're a performer. Why is that what you wanted to do?
It's not what I wanted to do. It's what divine creator wanted me to do. And I just, showed up. Events in my life happened that sort of like paved the way.
Yeah.
And I heard it. And no matter how I twisted and turned and jumped and hollered and tried to pull myself away, it always brought me back. It was always there. It's just another form of a platform for me to reach the people.
Was it a struggle? When you say as you turned to pull away, did you ever not want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. I say that like that because I love what I do, and I'm blessed to do what I do. It's the interference of sometimes the business that gets in the way of doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know yourself, you like to interview people, but in order to do that, you've got to go through certain red tape in order to be able to sit in that chair.
Right.
Know, so. It's no different from my profession. You have to go through certain channels in order to be able to be on that stage and share what you want to share with the public. And so that gets bothersome sometime, but the overall picture is bigger than the petty, what's the word I'm looking for? Little bumps in the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Does fame, though, make it easier? As your fame comes along and you have success, then does all of that fade away more, or do you still have to battle?
I don't know. I'm still working on the fame part.
Oh, I don't think so. But when you started off, it was a different set of challenges.
Yeah.
So did fame make it easier, or are they just new, different challenges?
I don't know. They're new sets of challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you are starting out, you just want it all. You still do want it all. I still do want it all. Responsibilities become more intense. In the beginning, you have none. You're just throwing yourself into it. Let me. And then responsibilities come, and then you got to have you use discretion on what you do and how you do it.
People, I'm sure, are always pulling. I know you do so much different work in charity areas, mm-hmm. and a lot of people must always be asking, you've got a name, you've got name recognition. How do you decide where you give your time?
Where the passion is for me. Like, for example, being here in Houston, my friends Judy Faustin and Jay Branson called me down to work with them in the Variety Club. Now, the Variety Club does something that's very passionate to my heart. They work with young people. They go into the community. They provide a service which is very much needed for families that cannot provide for themselves. This I'm very passionate about because we as entertainers, I think, are in the position to shine the light in that area so the public can see where the needs are. So often we sit back and we go, well, government will take care of it. But government only works if we work within the government, as the people. And we must sometimes come to the aid. The government's got its job, running the country and making sure that in foreign affairs and all this. So what about the home ground? We've got to take care of the home ground. So it becomes the responsibility of the home folk to take care of the home people, And so we've got, someone once said, my brother's keeper, And I think the answer came back very, very loudly and very profoundly on 9/11. Yes, you are your brother's keeper. Because without you helping your brother, there is no one, you and I to make a harmony, to make a family. So we've got to learn to work with one another, love one another, and support one another. And that's what you're doing here in Houston with the Variety Club, you know, that they are servicing the community. They are loving their neighbor. They are their brother's keeper. And so the community, seeing that, must come to the forefront and support the Variety Club. So I come from New York to lend my name in support of this effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned 9/11, and an amazing story, I think, about what you did was you didn't just lend your name to efforts that were going on after 9/11.
It wasn't about
You
me.
actually went there and were involved with doing the work.
Yeah.
And I think so many people didn't in your position. It would have been easier to have done other things, but
Well,
you got
I'm sure they
involved.
wanted to, and coming in their defense, they wanted to, but were unable to or didn't know what to do because everyone was shocked.
Yeah.
The nation, the world was in shock that something this devastating could happen in this time at our door, in our yard, in our living room. Didn't know what to do, you know, and I was fortunate enough to be close enough to do something, and I did it.
Yeah.
You know? But that's about being your brother's keeper, isn't it? About, once again, what we're talking about. You know, yes, we are our brother's keepers, and we must help one another. You know, love is the first law, and if we can learn to love one another, truly, if we truly are following the teachings of Jesus the Christ, then we must learn to love one another and care for your brothers and your sisters.
When did you learn that? Because there were things in your life that I think a lesser man would have crumbled from and wouldn't be sitting here today saying to me, you've got to learn these lessons and move forward. Was there a moment where all of this made sense to you?
I'm still learning this lesson. It's something that has, I don't know when it happened, it just was there. And it has been a rock for me in a time when I was very shaky.
Yeah.
Faith, deep spiritual understanding, or seeking to understand spirit, you know, which I still am. You know, it's a quest that's on for lifetimes to understand the power and the wonderful awesomeness of this thing. You know, we call it by many names. You call it, you know, you call it Jesus, you call it God, you call it Allah, Buddha, Krishna, Elohim, you know, but it's one power. And understanding that awesome power is mind-boggling. You know, we have scientists and intellectuals and people who are still, doctors who are still trying to understand the wonderfulness behind life itself and the gift, you know. And we're all entitled to that because we're here. You know, we've been blessed with this life. You know, so from point A to point B, you know, it's, you know, we were born and then you die, you know, but what do you do with the dash in between?
Yeah.
You know, so what are you going to do with your dash? The Variety Club chooses to be their brother's keeper with their dash.
Right.
You know, and the people of Houston have come to the forefront to say we support this effort. You know, what I choose to do with my dash is what I do. And I hope I'm doing it well, and I'm trying to do it to the best of my ability by getting out of the way of myself.
If we were having this conversation today and the accident you had back in '93 hadn't happened, would you be the same? Would this be the same message coming from you, or did that make a profound change?
It did. It did. I think it hurried the message up. What I mean by that, it brought it to the forefront faster. But you got to understand something about lessons. Sometimes, you know, we have a tendency within this human consciousness to try and to put it to the test. And so after the blessing has come, you know, we say, okay, it's like, you know, God, please repair me, please help me through this, and I promise I'll do this, I promise to do that, and then the universe answers you the angels show up, and the doctors and the nurses and the occupational therapists, the physical therapists. The prayers are being answered. The friends who've bent their knees, and the friends you don't know who bent their knees and prayed for you, they're being answered. The meditations that went up for you, they're being answered, right? And you all of a sudden you start feeling good, and you run out and back into life. And then meanwhile, God, the universe is saying, but wait, I'm not finished with you. And you go out talking about your wonderful blessings and all the things, and you find yourself falling and tripping and through life going, why am I in this space? Because the Creator is not finished healing you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to be still, learn to be still to receive the complete healing, and let that dictate the moves, and so that people need to know, about the blessings of the healing, that they do happen, they do occur, that there are people who really care and are out there to share and to help you over the hurdles of life.
Yeah.
And they are. And they really are. Once again, we are our brother's keepers and sisters' keepers. I got to say sisters in there because I don't want to say, it was the politically correct thing to say.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the accident, and for people that don't know, if I understand it correctly, you were in a car accident in which you hit your head, which then caused a stroke, and then you were hit by a truck.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Just all in the course of a few moments.
Well, not in the course of a few moments, over a period of a day.
Oh.
I believe, from what I'm told, the accident was that afternoon. I was walking home that evening or early in the morning and had a stroke and was hit by the van. So it was over a course of a day, on June 9th of 1992. That's when that happened.
When you talk about all of this, and you talk about the understanding the greater power and all of that, during all of that time, was there any point where you said, this isn't working, and questioned your faith when you were recovering, when you were going through all that?
No, there was a point when I felt that the doctors were doing all that they could do. And the therapists were doing all that they could do. And they were operating on me and operating on me. And at one point, I was all right with letting go and dying. No, I said, am I going to die? It's okay. In my head, I had made peace with that. And I turned to a nurse and I mouthed, because I had a trach, I couldn't talk. And I said, am I dying? And she looked at me. And she said, no, you're not dying. I'm not going to let you die. Those words still resonate in my mind, in my ear. No, I'm not going to let you die. So God's angel was encamped around me, there in the hospital room, pushing me back to my bed.
Yeah.
The angels are there, they're here on this planet, but we got to hear them. Then we hear them, then we go, okay, got it, we run back into life. I'm not finished with you yet.
I was just reading something somewhere where someone wrote that God always answers your prayers, but we only notice it when it's the answer we want.
Exactly.
And sometimes you're missing the whole point.
That's very good, because it all may not come in the way that you want it,
right.
But it's always right on time. Some people, for example, I'll use this analogy. They pray for oh God, I want a Cadillac car. But the idea is that you want a car to have mobility. Now, it may not come as a Cadillac, it may not come as a BMW, it may not come as a Mercedes, but you get a vehicle. Now, with that vehicle, you move to the next place where you can obtain the monies or the access in order to get that next place. But the blessing is the prayer is answered. It may not come the way you want it, but it's there. It may not come the way we, as I said, we want it, but it's right on time. And that moves you into another space. And sometimes I tell young people when they go to auditions and they don't get that job, I said, well, that job wasn't meant for you. But you got to understand that the universe has something else in store for you. Just be patient and stay in prayer and continue to work on you. Work on you. Do the things you know you need to do in order to make you a better artist, to make you a better person, to make you more loving, more compassionate, more understanding, and watch who shows up in your life.
What was going through your mind when you first started auditioning, though? Were you able to accept that at that point, or?
I wasn't. I was not in this consciousness then. I was, young. I was, full of piss and vinegar. I wanted to get out there and just go and go. So I wasn't. This passion has not, and it's still not totally defined for me. But at that point, it was not completely. So I was just in the passion. I didn't think about it. Something just kept driving me. When I first got my first, I talk about this often. It was meeting Bob Fosse, and going to that audition, meeting Tom O'Horgan, meeting these wonderful people like Sammy Davis Jr. Happened to be somewhere, and it just kept evolving.
Yeah.
I had to just continue to work on myself and show up. So often people say, "Oh Lord, please give me a job today. I'm losing my house. My taxes due, and they're gonna take my car. And my family's about to leave me, and then they get back in bed. But God says, help me out here. At least buy a newspaper.
Yeah. God helps those who help themselves.
Exactly. At least help me out here. So that show up. I often use the analogy when I was in the hospital, and I was laying in bed there, and people so often when they get in these situations, they say, well, God's going to heal me. God's going to heal me. God says, please show up in consciousness and in prayer. I've got my angels working on you. So you got to show up in spirit. You got to show up in consciousness. You got to continue. You've got to work as hard as they are working on this human toy to bring it back. God helps those, yes, who help themselves. Because God needs us in order to be God. So without that understanding, then we just figure we're separate from that divine power, and we are not.
Do you think you have an understanding yet what your role is, what He wants from you?
Oh.
Because there were places where you probably shouldn't have made it to here, and you have.
Oh, there are many times.
Just
last week.
So there's a reason that you're moving forward still.
Yeah.
Do you think you know?
No, I don't know. I can't say actually. Honestly, I don't know, but I'm open and receptive to it now. More than ever.
I want to go back a little bit to hit a couple things that you've done career-wise.
Okay.
Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? That we should be talking about this whole metaphysical, experiences in life, or spiritual things in life, and you should mention Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a very controversial piece when it first came out. I remember going through the backstage. The nuns hitting me with rosary beads, saying "blasphemy, blasphemy."
Right.
But what we in our generation were trying to do is bring out the name Jesus, the power of the name Jesus. It didn't matter the music that we were using. We were talking about the resurrection, about the words, about the devotion and faith.
Yeah. Did you have any idea that the show would be, I know it had already been in London, but did you have any idea the reaction you would get here? That people would be upset, that there would be the nuns angry over that musical?
No, we did not. Tom O'Horgan called me, and I was in Berkeley. I just finished doing a play by Charles Gardone called No Place to Be Somebody. And I was working with Jane Fonda in a thing called Free the Army show. And we were traveling around to doing these shows in the Army camps, various camps. And Tom O'Horgan calls me and says, I got this show called Jesus Christ Superstar, and I want you to come and audition for it. And I got on a plane. He sent me a plane ticket. I went back to New York and auditioned for the show. I didn't know anything about the show. I just knew that Tom wanted me, and I was going to do this show. Yeah. And so I got the show, and we went to work on the show. And what was wonderful was the way that Tom approached it. He didn't approach it from just the fact of just doing another play. What he did was have us get into one another. We did exercises on friendship and trust, You know, so that we'd blindfold people and have them stand in the middle of a circle, and people would stand around them in a circle, and they would just fall backwards, trusting that someone would be there to catch them.
Yeah.
You know, things like exercises like that, for example, so that the company became so solid as a family. You know, we became apostles and disciples, and you know, we became that. You know, in rehearsal. So that by the time the show hit, you had this core of people who were moving in that same voice.
Yeah. So then it must have been kind of shocking and surprising to see the controversy that came with it.
Oh yeah, it was.
If it was such a united...
It was very surprising because, you know, first of all, I was playing Judas, you know, and so I had to deal with that.
Right.
And here's the man who betrayed the Savior, who betrayed Jesus the Christ, who was the you know, and then of course the African Americans being upset about the fact of a black man playing that role. You
right.
know? And so I said, well, I've got all these hurdles to overcome, Father God. How am I going to do this? You know? And so I just, I just had to find a way to justify why this man betrayed Jesus in the first place. And in my consciousness is the fact that I said, well, the way I played it was that Judas and the band of apostles were truly revolutionaries. You know, they were radicals. And Judas wanted more than anything for Jesus to rule over Rome, to come to that throne, to take the power. So he figured in his mind, if he could put him in that position, seeing how the people rallied around him. This is my justification.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is biblical.
It's an interesting take on the role.
You know, in his consciousness, if he would put him in in captive by the Romans, that the people would rally and cause a revolt and take Jesus from them and place him in his rightful position as king, as on the throne of Rome, you know, that sort of thing. That was my justification. Then when that didn't happen, of course, he went nuts and committed suicide, you know, because he couldn't bear the fact that he gave up his best friend.
Right.
You know, his teacher, his master, drove him crazy.
Do you ever...
So that's how I justified it for myself.
Can you ever let go of the characters, or did the characters stay with you for a lifetime that you've played? Things like Jesus Christ Superstar, Chicken George.
They're like my children.
Yeah.
You know, they have been with me. They've shared and I've walked in their path. And so, you know, of course I think of them often.
Yeah. Real quick, I see we're running out of time. Roots, anything you want to mention about Roots?
I'm glad we haven't.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for Alex Haley traveling across to Africa, coming back on a steamer ship to feel what it was like to be, you know, he had some semblance of what it must have been like to be, you know, cargo, and for him to actually write this book for not only African Americans but for the world. You know,
yeah.
I'm thankful to have been a part of that voice.
Do you remember how you watched it the first time back?
Yes.
Were you at home with...
Well, first of all, now that, when it aired, you know, having marched with, you know, with King and Malcolm X and that whole, growing up through that whole era, I expected riots to break out, you know? So I watched it, you know, at home, and matter of fact, that whole week, I don't think I went out. And when I did go out, it was to do the American Music Awards, I believe. And I walked out on stage to a standing ovation, was standing with Merv Griffin. I thought the standing ovation was for Merv Griffin. And he turned and he said, "No, that's for you."
Wow. Isn't it funny, the thing we thought would be the more controversial wasn't, and the one
other,
yeah.
Exactly.
How life plays those games with you. So what do you want to do next?
What do I want to do next? All that the Divine Father God has for me to do.
Yeah.
You know, what I want to do next is I want to go out tonight. I want to enjoy these wonderful performers here in Houston who've come forward to lend their talents to put on a show to raise money for the Variety Club. You know,
yeah.
That's the immediate thing. I'm later going off to Europe to do a show called Fosse, which I did on Broadway. And after I'm living every day.
Do you ever get tired?
The body sometimes gets tired, but the spirit never gets tired.
I can think of no better place to end it than right there. Ben Vereen, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
To order a transcript, call 866-652-3378 or send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.